Hello, I'm Reverend Kenny Callahan, the pastor of Metropolitan Community Church of Richmond. This coming Sunday is the second Sunday after Epiphany, and also the day that we celebrate the ministry and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The sacred text for this Sunday is taken from 1 Samuel, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 to 20, also known as the call of the prophet Samuel. It turns out that God calls Samuel to do something that is not easy to do, to speak against Eli's sons. Samuel had to stand up to the family of the very person who has taken him in and cared for him, the very person who has instructed him how to listen to God's ways. As people of faith, we are called and empowered by God to speak and stand up for God's justice for all people. And sometimes this means that we have to speak up against the people and institutions that have nurtured us in our faith and our call. With God's help, we are encouraged to do our best to overcome the voices of fear inside us and the voices of doubt around us. We do this one step at a time. And as we follow our call, we discover that God is present with us, giving us courage and strength that we need to face the task that God has called us to. I strongly would encourage you to listen to Dr. King's famous speech, I Have a Dream, and to read his letters from the Birmingham jail, in which he writes to some of the very clergy who have supported him, but have also tried to stop him in an attempt of avoiding conflict and pressure from society and those who held public office and government office. Dr. King realized that prophets are called to speak to conflict, to address it and not to run from it, to speak and act despite of fears and the fears of others. While one can argue for or against calling Dr. King a prophet, it is clear that God worked through Dr. King as he lived his life, as many of the biblical prophets did, speaking up, standing against, and acting out against systemic racism, hate, and marginalization, and instead insisting on raising his voice and leading others for God's ways of justice, hope, and love. As we celebrate Dr. King's ministry and legacy, we remember his dream to acknowledge and celebrate our diversity, accepting and claiming that we need each other to be part of the kingdom of God here and now, and proclaiming and celebrating, remembering that God has created us all just the way we are. So the question is, what will MCC Richmond do as a spiritual community? And what will you do personally to follow the example of Dr. King and prophetically witness to God's radical inclusive love by seeing all people as siblings in God and living and sharing God's justice and transforming love with others without hesitation?